The Raiders deliver the ultimate Christmas gift to Raider Nation on Christmas morning with a victory over the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll talk all about it here on Tuesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, December 26, 2023.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. As always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, thank you. We appreciate you checking us out for a couple minutes or 33 minutes, whatever the case may be. We definitely appreciate that. We appreciate my man Ari does a great job each and every day, making sure we're up on YouTube and we're looking good. Of course, you can check out Ari on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. A lot of feedback to get to following Monday's victory over the Kansas City Chiefs 20-14 in Arrowhead. So as you can imagine, tons of feedback straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line. We'll get to as much as possible coming up in segment number 3. Segment number 2, I want to take a minute to talk about Coach Antonio Pierce, interim head coach Antonio Pierce, and why I believe that he's already earned the job, and the victory on Monday over the Chiefs in Arrowhead, again, only solidified it, and really what that reminded me of, a game that I feel like is pretty historical in the history of the Raiders, what that game reminded me of on Monday on Christmas Day. We'll talk about that in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, I'd like to hit you with the news and notes or following the game day, just how about the Raiders came to the 2014 victory over the Kansas City Chiefs. So, of course, we'll do that. We'll hand out some game balls as well. We'll do that after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guarantee. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. The game, 20-14. The Raiders get the victory over the Kansas City Chiefs and improve to 7-8 on the season. And believe it or not, couple things. They actually have an opportunity to still win the division. They could still be AFC West champs when it's all said and done. Now, they'd have to have a lot happen. They have to win out the rest of the way, and the Chiefs have to lose out, which isn't likely, but there's still a chance. But they're also still in the thick of things with the wild card hunt. The Denver Broncos lost on Sunday, and so the Raiders still have an opportunity. There was actually a lot of things that went their way over the weekend that went pretty well for the Silver and Black, so they're still mathematically alive, but ultimately it all comes down to just win, baby. They win games, and then they let the chips fall where they may. So I'm not really worried about the playoffs. I'm not worried about talking about the playoffs right now. We've got plenty of time for that. I am worried about, and not even worried, that's the wrong word, but I am here to talk about the way that the Raiders came away with this victory on Monday, giving the ultimate Christmas gift to Raider Nation. And this was a game that was won on the strength of the defense. You've got to give the defense 100% of the credit. I know the offense did just enough, especially at the end. They were able to salt the game away with the running game of Zamir White and the offensive line opening up some holes. But this was the game that you look at the defense, you tip the cap and say thank you. Right? The Raiders defense, who I believe has been the strength of the team all season long, has really ramped up since Antonio Pierce has taken over November 1st. Not only have they been playing solid defense all year long, now all of a sudden they're creating turnovers, they're getting takeaways, and they're scoring. They're finding ways to score. First of all, the defense only allowed the Chiefs 14 points, which tells you all you need to know. If you say that the Chiefs are only going to score 14 points, you're going to feel good about the opportunity to win that game every single day of the week and twice on Sunday. The only problem was the Raiders' offense wasn't worth the salt on Monday. They couldn't get anything going. They scored a field goal early on a drive that was a very impressive drive that should have resulted in a touchdown. They just couldn't cash in once they got to the red zone. And then they scored a field goal late, right? And then they converted on, a 2-point conversion after a defensive touchdown. And that was really all the offensive output that you saw as far as scoring. Again, they had the great drive at the end to salt the game away and secure the victory for the Raiders, but this was a game that you look at the defense and say, thank you, and thank you. Not only did they come up with stops, not only did they come up with takeovers, but they scored touchdowns. Again, 2 touchdowns on the day. They had a defensive tackle score on Bilal Nichols, and then a play or two later, Jack Jones comes up with another pick six, takes it to the house, talks a little talk to Mahomes on the way to the end zone, then teases a fan there of Kansas City about to hand the ball to him, says, no, just kidding, not going to hand you the ball. Jack Jones was getting a little squirrely in the game. I think that he's going to have to try to rein it back a little bit. You saw Antonio Pierce and him kind of going back and forth after the pick six. He started getting into it with one of the Chiefs, and Antonio Pierce was basically trying to tell him to keep his composure. And that's what you're going to get with Jack Jones. But the results are there. He's a player. And 2 games in a row now, he's been in the end zone with pick sixes. So the defense did a hell of a job limiting the Chiefs, giving them and making them frustrated all game long. I mean, the Raiders as a team had another 4-sack performance. Malcolm Kuntz alone had 3, and they had another takeaway. So remember I talked about that 40 sacks and 20 turnovers? Yeah, they're full steam ahead. They're like, Q, we heard you. We heard you loud and clear, and we're on our way. Adam Butler had a sack. Crosby had an early tackle for loss, and Malcolm Kuntz, as I mentioned, had 3 sacks of his own. Mahomes was running for his life the entire game. One of my big keys to victory was make Patrick Mahomes uncomfortable. Mahomes ran for over 1,000 yards on the day. Think about that. He ran for over 1,000 yards. That reminds me of the Super Bowl where the Chiefs lost to Tampa Bay, and that Tampa Bay defense had Mahomes on skates the whole game. That's what it looked like on Christmas morning, watching Mahomes run around. And look, he's a hell of a player. So he made plays. He was a magician where he got out of a lot of tackles. The Raiders defense, with any other quarterback, probably sacked about 7 or 8 times. But Mahomes found ways to get out of there, make plays, run around, pick up yards, and even create some nice plays for himself and for his teammates. But for the most part, man, that Raiders defensive line was just nasty all game long. Another one of my big keys to victory for the Raiders that I talked about on Monday's show was the interior defensive line had to have that push. They had to be solid. And that defensive line, I mean, you really got to give them so much credit for being disciplined and not getting out of their lanes and not allowing Patrick Mahomes to step up and all of a sudden become that, that 3-headed monster where he can continue to run. He could throw left, he could throw right, he could look right and throw left. I mean, there were so many different things he could do once he steps up into the pocket. The Raiders defensive line wasn't allowing him to do that. I mean, you got to give a lot of credit to those guys on the interior, from Butler to Bilal to Tyree to Jenkins. I mean, all those guys, the big beef in the interior of the defensive line, they did their job in a major way. So you got to give them a lot of credit for that. Again, the defense was such a strong unit on Monday. Again, some more of the keys that I had to victory is that the Raiders had to be able to establish the run, right? And I mentioned that the offense wasn't very good, and it wasn't. They were struggling. Aiden O'Connell had 10 incompletions in a row at a certain point, really ended the game without a completion. I don't think he completed a pass after the first quarter, and that's a problem. But again, I'm not here to criticize today. Today I'm here to give a lot of shout outs and and give the Raiders their flowers for going into Arrowhead on Christmas morning and picking up the victory. But the offensive line, I thought, did a really good job. Zamir White, again, filling in for Josh Jacobs as he wasn't able to go. He was ruled out on Monday morning. They tried to test him before the game, and he wasn't able to go with that quad injury. So Zamir White, all he did is run the ball 22 times for 145 yards and had a big 43-yard run at the end of the game to really salt away the victory for the Raiders. But he was solid, right? And he looks fast, he looks fresh, and he should be, because he hasn't gotten on the field very much in his career, let alone this year. So he should be fast, he should be fresh, and he looked like it out there. And again, the Raiders' identity is what? It's run the ball, right? Regardless of what you want to think about, throwing the ball, getting creative, getting Devontae and Jacoby and Hunter and Trey Tucker. Yeah, we want to all see them get involved in the offensive game plan. But the Raiders are a run-first team. That's their identity. That's who they are. It doesn't matter if it's Josh Jacobs. Doesn't matter if it's Zamir White. Hell, they even went for it on 3rd and 7 and ran the ball with Amir Abdullah. It didn't come up. They didn't get a first down. But, I mean, that's how committed they are to the run, that they're willing to go for it on 3rd and 7 and run the rock. And then they had another, 3rd and 5 that they gave it to Amir Abdullah, and he picked up the first down. So there's no doubt that their identity is run the ball, and that's exactly what they did. But, again, just hats off to the defense. Not only do they go out there and make plays, but they expect to make plays. They're up there playing with swagger. You could see that they're not going to back down. They don't look at Kansas City, oh, that's a big, bad Kansas City Chiefs, and we have to be worried and concerned about them. And every player that I talked to in the Raiders locker room leading up to that game was basically saying the same thing, from Jermaine Illuminor to Thayer Munford to Nate Hobbs to Amik Robertson to Jack Jones. Like, every one of those guys all basically had the same message. We ain't worried about those guys. We ain't worried about Kansas City. Not because Kansas City is a bad team, because we know they're not, but just the fact that the Raiders are like, yeah, the hell with it. We're tired of losing to them. We're just as good as them. We've had leads multiple times, and we found a way to lose. We're going to play all 4 quarters. And they did. Defensively, they played all 4 quarters. So, again, going back to my keys to victory for the Raiders, make Patrick Mahomes uncomfortable. Turnovers, 1 to 2 short fields. Well, they got the turnovers, but they turned them into points, right? Bilal Nichols and Jack Jones both scored. So they didn't even worry about getting the ball to the offense. They said, we'll score this ourselves. Offensively, again, the offense was a struggle. I said, take a couple deep shots at Tucker. That didn't happen. They did throw one deep ball to Jacoby Myers that was broken up, but that was really on Aiden O'Connell just trying to make a play. The creativity from Hardegree, it was really like one or two creative plays that you saw where Jacoby Myers went for about 21 yards on a really nice play that was blocked really well, nice little wide receiver screen. But as far as everything else, the offense, again, like I said, was pretty anemic. And, of course, the run game was definitely there with Zamir White. Special teams keep being special. For the most part, they were. They had the little mistake on the extra point where A.J. Cole fumbled it a little bit, and he did set it up. Thought that Carlson had an opportunity to kick it, but he was out of rhythm and just wasn't going to be able to do that. Ultimately, the Raiders score a touchdown later and get 2 points on the two-point conversion, so they were able to make up for that. DeAndre Carter, I thought it would be a good game for him to break one. I think he tried a little hard to break one early and didn't secure the ball on the first punt. He fumbled it. Jacorian Bennett had an opportunity to get on it. He didn't get on it, but the Raiders got it back. I think that was DeAndre Carter trying a little bit too hard. Wanted to make a big play, was trying to obviously run before he actually caught the ball, and it didn't work out well, but luckily for the Raiders, they did not turn the ball over. Overall, play with confidence. And if there's one thing that they did on Monday was play with confidence. So who am I giving game balls to? Well, defensively, you got to give it to Jack Jones and Bilal Nichols. They scored touchdowns, right? The big man got in, and Jack Jones with another pick six. Malcolm Kuntz, 3 more sacks on the day and was in the backfield. Patrick Mahomes had to know where Malcolm Kuntz was all game long. He is proving to be the ultimate, addition to this defense where the complement across from Max Crosby, dude's up to 7 sacks on the season and multiple fumbles he's forced. And then also defensively, a game ball goes to Patrick Graham. Give it to Patrick Graham, man. He was the guy that everyone expected to be the scapegoat. I expected he to be the scapegoat when the season didn't go the way the Raiders wanted it to. All he's done is had the defense playing lights out, cooking with grease, right? And the last few weeks have really been ramped up since Antonio Pierce took over November 1st. So defensively, Jack Jones, Bilal Nichols, Malcolm Kuntz, and Patrick Graham. And really, you can give a hats off to everyone on that defense because a lot of guys made plays. Nate Hobbs missed a tackle early for a big play for Kansas City, then came up with a big stop on 4th down. So a lot of guys came up with big plays defensively. Offensively, not so much. I'll give the offensive line credit because they opened up holes for Zamir White, and Zamir White gets credit as well. 22 carries, 145 yards with that long of 43 when the Raiders needed it the most. So he's going to get a game ball on the offensive side of things and the offensive line for being able to be, those road runners and be able to block downhill and allow Zamir to get 4 or 5 yards of carry. And that was even before he had the 43-yard run. I mean, every time he got the ball, he was picking up some nice yardage. So I thought he did a really good job, and they did a good job. There was a couple moments when Chris Jones, especially early in the game, started to dominate it when the Raiders were trying to throw the ball. But the offensive line settled in, and even when they had to switch things up in a pinch, Jermaine Illuminor went out real quick, so Thayer Munford clicked over to the right side. Colton Miller, who was there available for the game but didn't start, he clicked into the left tackle position, and they were okay. Illuminor eventually came back, but they were able to go. No worries. And then overall, and we're going to talk about him coming up in segment number 2, the ultimate game ball goes to Coach Pierce. He's got this team believing. He said that enough was enough. He was tired of losing to this team, and he was going to go in there and say that the best way to stop their trick plays is to punch them in the mouth. And that's what the Raiders did. They punched him in the mouth. So Coach Pierce, as he got emotional talking to Tracy Wolfson after the game, he gets the ultimate game ball for the job he's done, not only on Monday, on Christmas Day for the Raiders, but what he's done since he took over on November 1st. As a matter of fact, we'll talk about Coach Pierce and what he's done and why he's earned the job full-time, in my opinion. Thought he earned it before Monday, but that was the game that sealed the deal. I'll tell you what it reminds me of, and that's a pretty historical game that it reminds me of as well. We'll do that coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. We'll get to that right after I tell you about FanDuel, and it's getting colder outside. It's getting really cold outside, but that's okay because the offers continue to heat up with FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins, just like that. So you've been thinking about joining FanDuel? Good. You should. There's no better time to get in on the action than right now. The app, super easy to use, a wide range of betting options that go from spreads, player props, over-unders, anything you could imagine, really, they've got. So check it out, FanDuel.com/lockedon. Get into the NFL season the right way. I know the regular season's almost over, but, man, the playoffs are always a lot of fun to place wagers on as well. FanDuel, check them out today. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel is the official partner of the NFL. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to give Coach Antonio Pierce his flowers. He's been the interim head coach since November 1st. The team has gone 4-3, had their signature win of the season. He had his signature win as a head coach on Monday, beating Kansas City in Kansas City. And really, some cool things that did that stopped Kansas City from having an opportunity to be a 1 seed. So whatever they do in the playoffs, they're going to have to go on the road, and that's something that they're not used to. And also, obviously, for the Raiders, it gives them an opportunity to they can win the division. Like, it's as wild as that sounds, they literally could win the division if everything plays out the way it needs to play out. Now, there's a lot that has to go their way, but it's still alive, and so are the playoffs. But besides that, just the fact that he's got this team playing what everyone would call Raider football, right? I mean, everyone knows now what Raider football is, where the last year and a half or so, we had no idea what this team's identity was. At some point, it stepped up and it showed its face of, okay, this is the identity of the team, running the ball with Josh Jacobs. But it was never, ever something that you were super confident about. You never, ever saw the style of football that made you fall in love with the Raiders to begin with, right? That just kind of nasty swagger, that confidence, that expectation to win the game. I heard a lot of people calling the game on Monday a Christmas miracle. And I kept saying it's a Christmas miracle except for the fact that it's expected. Right? And everybody on that Raider team, in that Raider locker room, coaching that Raiders squad, believed that they were going to go and win that game. So not really a Christmas miracle. I get it. It's a really good play on the words, of course, but their expectations are there. And that tells you something about this team. And that tells you something about what Coach Antonio Pierce has done since taking over. He has given this team so much confidence that they believe that they're going to win every game. Like, I know they lost not too long ago 3-0 to the Vikings, and that was embarrassing. Coming off a bye, that shouldn't happen. But then to put up 63 points on the Chargers 4 days later, then get a little bit of a mini bye and go to Arrowhead and pick up a dub on a day where the Chiefs could have solidified the AFC West division. They could have won that. Everyone that covers the Chiefs believed that was going to be an easy Christmas win. They were going to go put easy work in, beat the Raiders, and get back to their families and celebrate. And everything but that happened, right? The Raiders were the ones that stole their lunch money and laughed at them when they did it. Didn't even try to run away when they stole their lunch money. Just took it. Was like, Debo, it's my money, punk, right? They weren't having it. But this game really reminded me, and I go back to 99 when John Gruden and the Raiders went to Arrowhead. And I honestly believed going into that game that the Chiefs were going to win that game and John Gruden was going to get fired. I ultimately believed that was going to happen going into the game. Remember, it was a pretty ugly game. It got pretty rainy. The Raiders got down early, and then they battled their way back. That was the Tyrone Wheatley game where he fell, and he's running from his knees. And the Raiders ultimately win that game. And John Gruden saves his job. Remember, that was October 2nd, I think, 2000? And that game alone right there pushed the Raiders, really gave them trajectory in the early 2000s, like of who that team was going to be. That didn't give them a playoff berth. It didn't do that, but it gave them that confidence, that belief that they could get it done. They could be that team. I really do believe that game on Monday against the Chiefs, stopping the Chiefs from winning the AFC West for the 8th time in a row, is going to go a long way. I think, like I said before the game, I thought that Antonio Pierce was the right guy for the job. I really did. But that was the signature win. It's almost like when you're a Heisman Trophy finalist and you got to have a signature moment. That was Antonio Pierce's signature moment. Going into Arrowhead and picking up that W. Talking all week long saying that, enough is enough. We're tired of it. We're tired of losing to those guys, right? We know what they're all about. We're tired of them. Okay, we get it. They're good. Cool. They did the ring around the rosies. Fine. That's cool. Whatever. Let's go. Let's go get them. Right, we've been up before, 17-0. We took our foot off the gas, didn't finish. We're up 14-0, took our foot off the gas, didn't finish. He's learning as he goes along. It's still not perfect. It's not going to be perfect. But think about what he's done since taking over mid-season and all of a sudden had to get a team prepared to play. And that's what they're doing. He's working with not the parts that he imagined. He's working with the parts that were there. It's like basically he walked into a kitchen. They said, all right, create a meal out of this. And he had no idea what was in the fridge. He had no idea what was in the cabinet. He didn't even know what half the tools were there. But he figured it out. And that tells you something about him. The coaches, they all want to play for him. The coaches want to coach for him. The players want to play for him. Like, that's the obvious. The leadership thing he's got down. The coaching, I believe that can come. That can continue to grow. He said it earlier in the week, matter of fact. He said the worst day I was as a head coach was November 1st. That was the day he took over. He was going to continue to grow and grow and grow. And that's all that he's done is continue to grow. He's going to have moments where you say, oh, that was probably a bad clock management opportunity, or that was a bad use of your timeouts, or you should have probably gone for it on fourth down instead of kick a field goal, or you probably could have kicked the field goal instead of go for it. But that's all stuff that's learned behavior, right? That's all stuff that you can figure out as you go along, as you get more comfortable, and as he surrounds himself with others. Could you imagine what a whole offseason with Antonio Pierce as the head coach, having the opportunity to go out and get the coaches that he needs, go out and get the personnel that he needs to implement his vision of the team, and then work with them all training camp, get these guys ramped up, ready to go all preseason, and then get into the NFL season? I said it when he took over, when a lot of people asked what I thought that he needed to do to hold on to the job, and I said he needs to finish. The Raiders need to finish the season like the Lions did a season ago, where they play really strong, they show everybody what they're made of, and they missed the playoffs. But everyone knew that they were going to be a good team. Now they just messed around and won their division for the first time ever. Right? First time in 30 years, but it wasn't even called the NFC North 30 years ago when they won it. So they have that opportunity. It's very Dan Campbell-like, and I don't want to just bounce off the idea of what the Lions are doing, but it's very similar. It's very similar, and I could definitely see this team going in the right direction. Are there some pieces that they're missing? Absolutely. But again, like I said earlier in the show, I'm going to talk about the positives today. We have all week long. We have all the rest of the season. We have all offseason to talk about what the Raiders need to do, what kind of players and people that they need to have around to be able to go where they ultimately want to go. But you got to figure out who your head coach is going to be. And I think that the Raiders have shown and found out who their head coach should be. And that win on Monday, again, I thought he was the head coach before. That was the signature win. You have to have your signature moment, and he definitely had the signature moment. The defense has gotten better. The defense is now taking the ball away and scoring. I mean, and it's funny, going back to the Vikings game, and remember talking to the players in the locker room like Amik Robertson, there was no pointing the finger at the offense like, why couldn't you guys score? Why you couldn't get more than 3 points? He said, it's our fault. We should have gone and scored. We had opportunity. We should have scored. And what have they done? The next 2 games following that, their defense has scored. So it's not like it was just lip service. It's not like they were just saying that so they, tried to sound like they were a tight-knit bunch. They literally are. And now their expectations are, hell, you guys can score, so could we. Let's go do it. I don't know what the rest of the season is going to hold. Obviously, they've got a tough game against the Colts and a tough game against the Broncos to close things out. But anything's possible, right? And they're sitting there at 7-8 right now. Again, they have an opportunity to still win the division. For him to have them in this position right now as they are, after 16 weeks and 15 games, in this position, when a lot of times, and you got to give Bisaccia credit as well, a lot of times when coaches get fired, the interim coach is just trying to just, not trying to let them crash and burn. Not only has he tried to hold on, he's tried to take this team to the promised land, which is the playoffs, and believes that he can get there. And as he told me last week that this team is playing with confidence, he told me on Saturday when we met with him that he's having fun. Every day that he goes up there to the podium to speak to us, he's got a smile on his face. And that's reflecting on the guys on the field. And that's all you can ask for. That to me seems like the guy who could be the ultimate coach for a very long time with the silver and black. And they got to go through the process of hiring. I get that. They've got to go through the interview process. And maybe someone pops off during the interview process and they're like, wow, this guy is unbelievable. But for my money, Antonio Pierce is the guy. And I'll take it a step further. For my money, I think GM Champ Kelly is the guy for my money as well. I have no problem endorsing him as long as, and this is the asterisk, as long as they go and get a head of football operations, someone who's got some skins on the wall that's been there, done that. And that's where you have the experience come in, where Champ Kelly obviously doesn't have the experience of being a full-time GM. He's only been the interim GM. So that would be my caveat right there, my little asterisk. But hopefully they do it in the order that they're supposed to do it, head of operations, GM, and head coach. But as I mentioned, for my money, the head coach is right there with the team already in Antonio Pierce. Coming up in segment number 3, what's on your mind? Your calls or texts. Got a lot of feedback following the 20-14 victory over the Kansas City Chiefs. 707-654-4693. We'll get into it in segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we do that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is Gametime. And if you're looking for tickets to anything, I'm talking about sporting events, concerts, comedy events, theater, whatever the case may be, Gametime is the place for you. And especially if you find out last minute that you got to come up with some tickets. Maybe some family and friends are coming to the town. They were coming to town for holidays, and you're like, oh, man, I got tickets to this event, but now I need 2 or 3 more. Let me go ahead and check out Gametime. Gametime has killer last-minute deals, all-in prices. You can see the view from your seat and their best price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. And the good thing is when you get to see the seats before you buy them, like you can see your view, you know exactly what you're going to expect when you get there at whatever event it is. All-in prices show your total up front. You know you're getting a great deal without hidden fees, and you can buy your tickets in seconds. Bada boom, bada bing, just like that. Well, how do you do it? Well, you download the Gametime app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's Gametime app. You got to download it, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. You get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create the account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and text straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start off with a call from ABA Ivan Davis, who's actually calling during the game. He didn't even wait for the game to finish. He wanted to call to talk about Antonio Pierce and has something to say that wouldn't have even changed based off of the results of the game. Here he is, ABA Ivan Davis.
What's up, Q? This is ABA Ivan Davis. I just want to go on record as saying I don't care what happens in the second half of this game. I'm calling during the game right now. Okay, I don't care what happens in the second half of this game. This is our coach. No one, and I mean no one, that we've had over the last few years have been able to do this to Kansas City. Okay, it wasn't until Antonio Pierce got a hold of this team is that these things started to turn around. Here's the evidence. I mean, we saw it. I mean, he bought himself some time with the Charger game, but this is the game. Can he turn around Kansas City? My answer is yes. I still don't think he has the personnel that he wants, but man, is he making the personnel that we have work. Okay, this is our coach right here. It would be, I don't care what coaches are out there. None of them is going to be able to do what he's doing right now. Okay, so anyway, and I'm thinking that the reason he's bringing in Adam Gates and all them other guys, I think if he's the head coach, all those guys will be on staff. Okay, and you're talking about a Hall of Fame staff that will turn around the Raiders. I hope Mark Davis can see this. Okay, I need your opinion on this, Q. I mean, I know it's hard to get calls in. You got a jillion fans. I get that. But maybe you can make this a topic. Okay, if not, so be it. Go Raiders.
Thank you for the call, my man. Great stuff. I feel the same way, obviously, based off segment number 2. He absolutely should be the coach moving forward. There's no doubt. I think he's going to continue to grow. He's clearly a great leader. That area of the job he's already got figured out. So that's not something that he's got to work on. He's just got to work on the X's and O's. He's got to work on the in-game time, game management, stuff like that. But that'll come with time on task, and I'm okay with that, right? I mean, you think about the last coach that the Raiders had. He wasn't a very good leader of men, obviously, and his in-game decisions were very questionable as well, right? So yeah, I'm with you. He, like he said, and I'll never forget it. His worst day as a head coach was November 1st, and that was the day that he was announced as the interim head coach. He's given this team a real identity, something that I believe that they so desperately needed. There you go. Thanks so much for the call, ABA Ivan Davis. It's always great to hear from you. Up next, got a text from Michelle on the 951. Hey, Q, it's Michelle from the 951. Happy holidays to you and your loved ones. The way I watch this defense fight with their hair on fire, I know it's for AP. They want to keep him. They want him as a head coach. I do believe that if he proves he is humble and willing to learn and is able to present his plan to bring in good supporting staff, he will be the next head coach. He has the potential to be the next Coach Campbell. And let's not forget that Campbell did not have a fantastic first year. That being said, beyond a few pieces of offensive line, the weakest point with the Raiders is quarterback. Put a franchise-level quarterback in that scheme and 1 to 2 O-line updates. Undoubtedly, this is a championship team. That defense looks nasty. Most of the pieces are there for offense, minus a truly dynamic quarterback. Just my 2 cents. Happy holidays, Raider Nation. Just win, baby. That's from Michelle in the 951, and I agree. Right? I said I wasn't going to get into what the Raiders need, but there's obvious needs that they have. And you just said it, a franchise-level quarterback is definitely one of them. And like I said, we'll get into that conversation. We'll figure out who it could be. But for this day, it's about celebrating the Raiders' victory over the Chiefs because they need it. But he's already, in my opinion, proven that he's humble enough to ask for help by bringing in Marvin Lewis, by bringing in Tom Coughlin, by bringing in Adam Gase just to get some evaluation from them. Hey, what do you think of my practices? How do you think my meetings are going? How do you think the communication I'm doing with the team? Just to pick their brains shows me all the humbleness I need. right? And to know that he's thinking about coaches, and based off the conversation I had with LeVar Arrington, he's got a lot that he's working on for this team right now and for the future. So I think that he's shown what he needs to show, and I love the comparison with Coach Campbell because that's exactly what I said as well. Thanks so much for the text. Appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Army Raider. He's calling to talk about the win, the two things that he saw that he liked, and also talks about what he didn't like. Here he is, Army Raider.
What's up, Q? It's your boy, Army Raider. Just enjoying watching what's always a good time when you beat the Chiefs. Just wanted to call and say this game showed two really good things and one bad thing. Focus more on the good because that's where we're at, but this defense is just lights out. There's such a difference in defense after Pierce took over. The defense has been great all year, but the turnovers started coming when he brought that attitude, and I love that. Second really good is, Zamir White. He looks like we might have a player, even if Josh decides to move on and for that massive contract in Zamir White. I trust him fully after watching him grind it out today. The one bad is this team still seems to be a quarterback away from truly competing. Nate McConnell seems like a great kid, but he is nowhere near starting NFL quarterback. We won this on defense and Zamir White's back, so it's awesome. I love it. And let's go out, draft a quarterback. My choice would be J.J. McCarthy from Michigan. In the spot we're going to be drafting, he'll be there. I think he's a perfect fit for the system. And he gives us what we desperately need, which is a quarterback that can use his legs to cause plays. I think we win this game by, 20 points if O'Connell just runs twice. He had two wide open gaps to run for first downs and stuff and just didn't. So I love to see it. It's great to see a win coming. Great to see Pierce moving this team along. Let's finish out the season strong and go get a quarterback. But anyways, Merry Christmas. Much love to all the Raider Nation. Army Raider out.
Thanks so much for the call, my man. And, yeah, the Raiders are playing with confidence and swagger, man. The defense is making plays and they're scoring touchdowns. Like I said, I won't go in on the quarterback position right now. I think that you should just look at the game and be happy with the W, knowing that there's areas of the team that need to be improved. Just like similar to Michelle's text that she just had, there's obviouses, right, that just stand out. And I think that we all know where they are. But how do the Raiders get to it? Well, that's a conversation that we'll have on another day. But I totally get what you're saying. The only thing to say about any other quarterback is I think that they should go and draft one and get their own as opposed to going out and getting a guy. But we'll talk about it. We'll break it down. We'll discuss all that on other shows. But thanks so much for the call. I appreciate you, my man. And thank you for your service as well. Up next, got a text from Fonzie in Canada. Says, Q, Raiders, what a great win for Raider Nation. Let's enjoy this one. One question I've been thinking of for a bit now, if Mark Davis doesn't give AP the head coach position for whatever reason, do you think that decision would cause certain key players to question ownership and rethink staying or re-signing with the Raiders? Something I've been wondering for a while now. I wanted to see your input on that. Thanks, Q. Raider Fonz from Canada. Thanks so much for the text. And, yeah, I think that'll make a lot of guys question what's going on if they weren't to give AP the job. I think he's already earned it. I think every one of those players in the locker room knows that. Now, the thing about it is every one of those players in the locker room is not going to be here next year. So they know it's a business. Right, they know that sometimes, decisions are made that they don't like. I think the key players, though, are the ones that are also consulted on what's going on, like a Devontae, like a Max, like a Josh Jacobs. Guys like that are key contributors to the team. They're being consulted with from Mark Davis. He does care about what the players have to say, and unlike the Bisaccia situation, he didn't really take any feedback from the players and the guys in the locker room, even though everyone was clearly on Team Bisaccia and they wanted him to stick around. Again, this feels different to me than even that situation, though. I was never Team Bisaccia. I thought he did a hell of a job. I think he eats for free in Vegas. I think he took care of a situation that was a very tough situation to get through, and he got through it. I just never considered him as the head coach. But Antonio Pierce, I'm all in. And I just think it's obvious that he should be that guy. And I think that it's going to be very obvious when Mark Davis sits down and evaluates it as well. Thanks so much for that text. I appreciate you. I just got time for a couple more. How about this call from Green Eyes Raider? He's calling to talk about the win and what he'd like to see and has a butt to go along with it. Here he is, Green Eyes Raider.
Green Eyes 81 here, Q. Raider Nation all the way. Just watch this game, of course. Love the win. As much as I love Josh Jacobs being on the field and running the ball, it seems like the defenses are trying to figure out exactly what the Raiders are going to do. Now, with that being said, I know you're not a fan of Justin Fields, but I feel like the offensive line for the Raiders is better than the Bears. Imagine having Justin Fields, who will make those throws and actually get out of the pocket and pick up 7 yards, which O'Donnell didn't do. Imagine what it would look like. I literally think that underneath AP, Justin Fields, with the weaponry that he has, I think it'll be a beautiful thing. And it'll probably set the entire league on alert. Just a question. Hope to hear from you. Thanks. Love what you do. Bye. Go Raiders!
Thanks so much for the come on, man. And today I'm keeping it positive, right? Today I'm keeping it positive, worried about the huge win for the Raiders, want to focus in on the huge win. It's too often that they go to Arrowhead and lose. It's too often that they play Kansas City in general and lose. So I really just want to celebrate the victory today. We could always poke holes in a lot of different areas, right? I could talk about and spend a lot of time on the botched extra point, right? I could do that. I could spend a ton of time talking about the Raiders offense not being able to generate anything. I could do all that, right? I think we all are very aware of the issues, and especially the fact that the Raiders offense at one point, 10 complete incompletions in a row. Like, I get it. I totally get it. But like I said, today, focusing just on the victory and the fact that the Raiders went in, delivered a great Christmas gift to all of Raider Nation with a 20-14 victory over the Kansas City Chiefs. Thanks so much for the call. I appreciate you. Close out things with a text from Susan in Minnesota. Say, hey, Q, it's Susan from Minnesota. I'm a longtime Raider fan. I enjoy your show. There's an interesting comparison that I'd like to share. John Madden was the linebackers coach before becoming the Raiders head coach, and I'm pretty sure Mark was aware of that before making AP the interim head coach. Seems like it was meant to be, and I hope AP gets the permanent job. That's Susan in Minnesota. And, yeah, it's funny. That's a great point. Thanks for the text. I said that immediately when he got the interim job. I was like, well, the Raiders had success with another linebacker coach turned head coach in John Madden. Now, I don't want to put that kind of pressure and say he's going to be the next John Madden, but there's certain guys that just get it. There's certain guys that they understand, they have the pulse of the team. And that's what was the greatness about John Madden, right? It wasn't necessarily his X's and O's, but it was the fact that he believed in his players. He got through to his players. They listened to him, and they wanted to go and play with their hair on fire for him. That, I could see the similarities in AP already. That's exactly what they want to do, right? I mean, John Madden wasn't the stickler of every single rule, and he let his players be a little loose and have a little freedom. Well, Antonio Pierce does the same thing. They're shooting hoops in the locker room. They're smoking cigars after victories. I mean, they're having a good time. They're letting their hair down. Like Hunter Renfrow said, they're not walking around on eggshells. That means something. That means something. That goes a long way. And the Raiders are doing that right now. And Antonio Pierce has empowered them to do that and encouraged them to do that, to have those kind of celebrations and moments for themselves, because they go out there and they play a tough game. And a lot of them, nobody is healthy right now. Everybody's banged up, but they're all leaving it out there on the line, leaving it on the field to try to get victories. That's exactly what they're doing. So, I think that there's a lot to like. I look around the league. I look at DeMeco Ryans. He was a linebackers coach, defensive coordinator. He's got the Houston Texans cooking with grease, right? Even when their quarterback goes down, they're still playing well. Dan Campbell, former player. I know he was a tight end, but he's got those guys ready to run through walls for him in Detroit. Right? I mean, there's just something to be said about these former players that are able to communicate and get through to these players now and get them to do what they need them to do, which is run through walls each and every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, whatever the case may be, Saturday, whatever day it is, that's what they need to do. So, Susan, thanks so much for the text. Definitely appreciate you. That's going to do it for today's show. And Raider Nation, hats off to you. Big ups to you, because you received the ultimate Christmas gift by way of the Raiders' 2014 victory over the Kansas City Chiefs. So, coming up tomorrow, we'll have more news and notes. We'll have more calls and texts. We'll get some more feedback. Should be talking to Coach Antonio Pierce later on this morning at the Intermountain Health Performance Center. So whatever comes from that, I will bring you that as well on the show. But enjoy the week. You should enjoy it. Pump your chest out a little bit, celebrate a little bit, because that was a big win that the Raiders got on Christmas morning. Again, 20-14 over the Kansas City Chiefs. Until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.